Hi everybody, Kat here. Thanks for joining me today for another Christmas inspired landscape. I came up with something like this. So I have a little drawing here and I thought we could do this together today. I'm using a paper that I bought in Sweden. So I can't read if there's cotton on here, but I don't think so because this pad was only about $10, our money, Canadian money, so I don't think so. I have a little tiny eraser under here to lift my board, and we're going to get started. Here I have Colbalt Blue Hue mixed with my red Oxide. The reason I did this is they kind of separate, and in this painting here you might be able to see that separation, and I kind of like that color. So I'm going to try that for the snow. I have a little bit of masking fluid here. Now to start, I'm going to turn my work upside down and I'm going to get this nice and wet, this blue. Actually, I should wet my paper first because I don't know how this paper is going to behave. So I'm going to come around the sky and the little cabin. And I'm making it fairly wet. There, I hope you can see that. That's a nice even sheen. And I wet my brush already. And I don't want that even because there's going to be some snow here. So just letting the wash run up the page, like so. I just have my pad taped off. This is nice paper. I just have my pad taped off so that it doesn't run onto the other clean sheets. Sometimes that does happen and I get a little annoyed because I don't always want that color on my next painting. Okay. I'm using most of that color that I mixed, and I'm going to turn it around, and I have decided that my tree is going to be over here. So I'm taking some paper towel like this, and I'm going to dot out or blot out where I think I want my tree to be. We can fill in the rest later. There's a bit of a harsh line here. I'm going to see if I can remove that. Oh yeah, perfect. I'll take a stronger brush to do that. And that is working out just fine. There we go. That's kind of fun. So for the background, I do want it to look kind of like night. So I'm coming in darker around the top of the sky. And of course I ran out of color, so I have to make it again. Darn. I always try to use a brush that's not like a synthetic brush is what I try to use, because I find when I use the other kind, the color, I end up with too much water. Okay, just like that, and some down here. There, kind of dreamy looking. I think it would be darker on this side, as stands to reason, because the moon's over here. I'll leave a sketch of the drawing at the end of the video. If you don't know what to do with that, you take a screenshot of it, and then you can save it to your photos and print it out if you like. There we go. Now, while this settles, I'm going to try to do some things in the background. So I'm going to take my little fabric Ville card that I have here, and I'm going to etch out a few trees. So I'm going to angle it all different ways. So that one. I just want different sizes, different angles, like that. Because we all know trees don't grow straight up. They do their own thing. And a couple of in the background. This makes such a big difference in your painting. It just gives it a bit of texture and some interest to it. And this is a good way to do a birch. Now, in between here, I'm going to use my Hooker's Green. And I'm going to add, I'm getting a little puddle here, so I'm going to move my paper up like this. So actually, I'll put it upside down for a little bit because I want to get in here with my Hooker's Green, and I'm going to use some Payne's Gray. That's a color I'm going to try to use throughout, so I'm going to try to stick to these colors here. Payne's Gray. Oh, I put it in the wrong dish. Oh boy. Okay. And I just want to come in here, put a few like tree type things. They don't all have to be the same size. They can be behind your birch, they could be in front of your birch. So I hope you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put one right here. And because the paper's still wet, like you can tell that this isn't as wet as the top here. It's not bleeding as much, but that's okay. This one's bleeding out beautifully. That's exactly what I want. Here I wanted that and didn't get it, but it's not bad. So I'm wetting my brush, drying it off. I'm just going to soften these edges because I don't want these trees to be quite so, I don't want them detailed. I just want them to fuzz out into the background. Some kind of bush growing here. If you want to add more earth tones, I would wait a little bit. This tree is, I love it. This is exactly what I wanted. Just a hint at it off in the distance. Maybe something over here. So while this is drying, we're going to use the method that we used in the previous video I made about doing snow on pine trees. So right here I mixed up Hooker's Green and Dioxazine Purple. And for this tree, I'm going to start at the top. So this gray is very, very, very dark. So I'm adding some clear water here with my brush. And I'm going to dip it in here and make it gray. So we're going to do we're going to try and follow the whites that are here, the whites that we took out. And I'm just making some of those dab marks. If you didn't see the video, I will link it here somewhere. Now I'm going to take my Hooker's Green. I'll just put it in here, add a bit more water, and while this is damp, we're going to put some under the snow. And I'm going to come up here. And I'm just dotting my brush ever so gently here to make the tip of the pine tree. Now that we're going to get into bigger space, this should be a bit easier. Just making some random brush strokes. And I'm going to go under them with what would be the Christmas tree, the branches. Not using too much water in this because it will really bleed. Okay, so now we're going to come down here and we're just going to alternate. We're just going to put some all over until we get down to the bottom here. I've left a little pencil mark where I want the bottom to be. So when I do the drawing for you, that will be there. I'm just going to add a bit more water into that, so it bleeds up into that snow. Back to this, the pile of snow here. So I'm going to do one that's like kind of in the middle of the tree. And make sure it's nice and wet. Coming down here, whoops. Something out here too. And just touching the ends. You can also make it look a little more realistic. But we can play with that stuff later if you like. If it's too wet, you just drink up a little bit. Dry your brush off and drink a little bit up. If you use this method on very white paper, it looks really nice. It's really very effective. But it is tricky to get a nice background. So that's just a warning. I don't love going or outlining my paintings. It's not something that I love to do. So, but you know, we all like different techniques, so maybe you might like that. Making sure my brush is nice and clean. I think I dunked it into the green by accident. So here's some snow. Oops. And I want to go to here. So now I'm going to try to not go out too much farther. And try to keep the branches a little closer together here. Sometimes you can paint two boughs at the same time. Kind of kills two birds with one stone. And then while one is drying, you can do the other. Because you don't want this to be too wet. Oops. A lot of water on my brush. So that will cause more bleeding. So I'm going to dry off one of my brushes. I'm going to soak that up. Just like that. You don't have to soak it all up. It's not a big deal. I just want to show you how to do it if you get something you don't like. Okay. And now for the bottom here. have a branch coming out that way. And I'm not quite ready to get to the bottom just yet. Over here. And here. Get right up in that corner with the darkest part of your gray color. Because that would cause a, if you think about it, that would cause a shadow. The branch above it would cause a shadow on the snow. But don't get too, you can just ignore me. You don't have to get too fussy about it, because we'll work on that later. We can always add a little bit of white paint as well. And then one more at the bottom. Whoops. So I touched the wet green and I don't want that. So I'm really drinking that up. And then I'm going to use a paper towel to get the rest. That should nip it in the bud. So I'll try that again. I have to re-wet this one because it dried on me. That's how fast this dries. It's nice paper. It's just because it's not cotton, it doesn't, it like all cotton papers, it dries very fast. Like all non-cotton papers, it dries very fast. Because the water just sits on the top instead of getting absorbed. That's the difference. But sometimes that works in your favor. So I think if you find a good cellulose paper, you can be quite happy with it. I don't know what I did there, but I don't like that. Let me do the rest and we'll go back to that one. Okay, bit more green here. There. I'm gonna add a little bit of that Payne's gray. I'm going to use a bit of darker green in some spots. Make sure you dampen where you want to put it. It bleeds out a little bit more softly. Now here is pretty dry, so I'm going to do a couple of little wispy branches. Since the tree's in the front, you can see a little more detail. Yeah, I don't want to overdo it though. I don't want to turn this painting into, I want it to be nice and soft and loose. Just certain little areas. Now I think I should call that a done deal and get on with the rest of the painting. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to do a coat on the house. Now the house, I masked this off, this part of the snow, because of the sky, and I'm not sure if I'm finished with this sky, so I'm going to leave it masked for now. So for the cabin, I'm using some of the red oxide. You can use burnt sienna if you want, and put a little bit of red in it if you like. If you want these same colors. I'm adding a bit of brown in, and I'm just going to do a quick coat right over my windows, right over everything. And I'm not being very gentle about this whole procedure. I don't want it to look too cut out. So just like that. And I'm going to put a bit more brown underneath here because the moonlight's coming this way. So it's going to cast a shadow on stuff. It's going to be darker over here and it's going to be really dark over here. You're not even going to be able to see this side really. So just gently get lighter and lighter as you come over to the right side. Oops. Whatever boo-boo we make, we fix with white paint. So, and make sure the bottom isn't flat because this is supposed to be sitting in snow. Now while this is wet, I'm taking a tiny brush and I'm taking some raw sienna. This is the only time you'll need a yellow. So I'm taking a bit of raw sienna and I'm taking a little bit, I'm adding some Quin Gold to mine, but you don't have to, you can just use any kind of yellow you have. And I want to put some where the windows are. And dry off your brush and then try to push it around to make it, to outline those windows. Now I've lost my drawing here, so but it doesn't really matter to me. It's just to make it look like there's some light coming from inside these windows. And the same thing goes for over here. You can remove some of the paint if you like with your damp brush and then add some yellow. Kind of outlines the window for you. This is getting out of control. Just go over it with a bit of brown. Here, I'll show you what to do. I don't like how that's looking, so I'm just going to take my paper towel and I'm going to dab it up and I'm going to go back in with my brown and my red oxide. The more textured this part looks, the better. So don't get too stressed about what this looks like. Sometimes though, when you have a mistake, you might have to wait until it's dry to fix it. But I'm just showing you how carefree this little cabin is. So I'll do the other window after. Now to make brown a little browner, you can add in some blue, and since I'm using Cobalt Blue, I'm going to put that in with the brown, just to make it a little more grayish and darken it here while the painting's still quite wet, and here. Okay. Now there's a door here too, so I'll put that in. It's right here, the door. Like I said, I lost my drawing a little bit. Now I'm going to remove that window with a damp brush. Just removing paint, and I'm going back in with that yellow. It's because the yellow is too wet. That's what is happening to me. I keep forgetting that it's too wet. So I'll go back in with the yellow. And I'm going to sharpen up the window with some brown. Okay, now let's let this dry and I'll fiddle with it when it's dry. For the background, if your trees didn't come out the color you like. I kind of like that they're in this bluish light. Just use a stiff brush and dampen it. So I'm going to go through this project and do a whole bunch of these. This one looks like it got a little twisted up. A bit of a blob of paint here. I'm being extremely gentle. This paint, this color removes very well. This is a snap brush by Princeton, and it's a teeny tiny thing, and I quite like it for removing fine lines and some highlights sometimes in my painting. And over here it's okay because it's quite dark over here, so I'll have a couple in the catching the moonlight, but that's it. Maybe on this side. On the snow, what I've decided to do is I'm going to use a little bit of blue, cobalt blue, and I'm going to go over the snow quite lightly in a blue, a very pale blue. Very watery blue. And then where there's a tree or what have you, I'm going to make it darker there. So right here. And then of course under here. I'm grazing the paper with this. And what I will do later is I'm going to add some white just around the edges here because I find it a little too smooth. And it gives the snow a little bit of dimension. Now I'm also going to use a little bit of this gray color that I mixed up, very, very watered down, and I'm going to put it in front of this tree because the tree would be kind of casting a shadow this way because of where the moonlight is. I just don't want to make it a big deal. That's not what this painting is really about. But it makes a difference if you can add a few shadows here and there, like that. And then there's a little path that goes from the door here. So I'm going to use this gray and I'm going to use my brown. I'm using Paul Rubens brown, and it's kind of, they call it an umber, but I don't find it like as green as some of the umbers that I've used before. So just use whatever brown you like to look at. That's my advice to you. So I'm just going in like this for the path. And I'm going to use a piece of paper towel. And I'm just going to dirty up the paper a bit. Just like that. Just sliding it along. It's not wet. And I don't know if you can see that. It's not making a huge, it's just softening it out a little bit. And then with that same brush, I'll use a bit of the gray. Just to make it, to vary the color. Just dropping it in here and there. You can even make tire tracks if you like. You can run your but I'm not going to do that. And then I'm taking this light blue and we're going to come into this path with that cobalt blue with lots of water in it. And don't forget, we're gonna do some stuff with some white paint later. And when you want to add some little divots and stuff in the snow, like little pits. Add a bit of darker blue. And over here. I'm just using my finger. Some people don't like that, but when you use different media, like if you use pastels and stuff, that's what you do. You use your fingers a lot. The house is going to be quite dark over here. The tree too. Okay, now that everything's dry, I'm going to remove my masking fluid. If you don't use masking fluid, you don't have to. I just wanted to have some freedom with my sky. Whoopsie. Okay. I try to be so neat and tidy when I'm filming. As you can see, it's a real challenge for me. Okay, so I'm erasing my trees. And the snow on the roof. So I like my little wonky house here. So before I do more on my trees, I'm going to work a little bit on my house. So underneath where the roof is, I'm just adding some brown and Payne's gray again. I don't think you can see that too well. I try to zoom in on the painting because it's quite a small painting, so I figure you would prefer to see the painting rather than my palette, and especially not my water and stuff. I don't think you need to see that. So I'm just putting some of that very dark right here where the door is. Now this is more of the brown. Here. With the yellow that I have here, just going to paint some of that on the snow. So that's for the yellow light coming from the cabin. Next, I'm going to paint these trees. So I'm going to wet the tree. And I'm going to use a bit of this watery gray. And because the moon's coming from there, I'm doing the dark side of the tree on the left, the right, excuse me. And then I'm going to let it bleed out towards the left side. And I can add some darker in after. I just want to establish this much. Once again, I'm going to wet my tree. Add some watery gray to the right side. More concentrated dark now. Just spotting it in. Spotting that in. And if it doesn't bleed out by itself, you help it. Just tickle your brush along. So what the first layer of light gray does is kind of make it look round and give it a little bit of a color, a little bit of shape. And then the second adds those marks on the birch, on the bark. Okay, I think that's good enough. Now back to this house, because I keep messing up this door, so I'm going to use this darker color. Just want to make it darker on that one side, let it kind of bleed out. And then the windows as well are going to be darker on this side because of the moonlight, right? that. And we can also add some snow onto those after. Now take the yellow that you've been using. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to add some right around the windows. It's very subtle, but it kind of looks like there's light coming out of the windows. So that's it for that. In the background, I'm going to take this same sky color, quite watered down, and I'm just going to make some branches in the sky off these trees because they do have branches and don't want to forget them. I just don't want them to stand out too much. So keep your hand loose. Oop, that is masking fluid that I didn't throw in the garbage. And if it's watery enough, it's just going to fade off just enough that you'll just see them. And keep your hand up in the middle of the brush so you don't get too detailed about it. Because branches look better when they're kind of jagged and all over the place. And I'm going to also use a little bit of this gray and a little bit of this blue just to add a little bit of shadowing on the snow, just coming over the edge of the house. Maybe I'll make it a bit more blue. I think the blue looks nicer. Just like that. I would like to add some snow to this tree because the gray looks a little gray. So on this tree, I'm going to take some white paint, and I have a brush that has these teeth in it, kind of, also from the dollar store. And I'm going to add some white paint to the tree where I find it needs a little bit of whitening. Not too much. I really love how that turned out up here. I really love it. Just want to take a smaller brush here. You can also use acrylic white paint. You can buy that pretty cheap. I got this apple barrel. I think this was from Michael's. Not positive, but I think. So let's try that. I'm going to take a little bit. Yeah, very nice. And what I wanted to do was add some in the back here, just teeny tiny bit, because these trees are covered in snow. What I could do is splatter, but I still want these trees to have their own snow. That to me is good enough. I like the way the house turned out here. I was just going to put some snow here on the windowsills. On the door frame. A little bit of snow here and there. I kind of like it if you can do the edges of your painting here with the snow, because it just looks a little more realistic. It's not so even like that here. I decided to stop using this because it looked too polka dotty. I think the path here needs a little bit of help. So I'm going in with some brown and the red and the gray here. Just gonna because you want it to stand out a little bit. Not too much, but let that dry. Now when this white is dry, which should be in a couple of seconds, I want to put some lights on this tree. And the moon is a little bit sharp for me. So I have a brush that it has good spring to it. So I dampened it and I'm going to go around the edge of this moon, just like this. And what I'm doing is softening it. And I'm going on the outside and I'm just trying to take that harshness, remove that harshness from it. And then I take a paper towel and Bob's your uncle. I'm going to put some snow around here. I am enjoying my craft paint better than I am the PH Martin, so I'm going to keep using that. Just going to put some snow here. Okay, so for the really fun part, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some quinacridone gold over here and some scarlet red over here. And with a really clean brush, I'm going to wet the tree, not soak it, but dampen it, just like that, back and forth. I don't want to make anything run, and I'm not familiar with this paper, so it might happen. And I'm going to take some of my scarlet. I'm going to dab it right there, here and there on the wet. It's quite concentrated, and that's what you want, because I just want the lights to look like they're peeking out. Now the yellow. I think I'm going to go over the red one more time. And now, last but not least, take a fair size brush, dip it in your white paint, roll it, add a little bit of water, and we're going to make it snow. And just before I remove the tape, I see that the cabin is missing some snowflakes. And so this is your opportunity to just add a couple of details here and there. So while I stood back, I could see that I couldn't see enough of this against the white. So just adding a little bit more darks here. Okay, so this is my Christmas cabin in the woods. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you give it a try. If you liked it, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Happy watercoloring, everybody. Bye-bye.